Those who are envious and mischievous, for the lowest among men, are perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into the various demonic species of life. If we want to safeguard against these negative natures, these tamasic natures, what we need to do? There are 3 gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. When you covet something and you don't get it, someone else has it, you are envious of that. So when you don't have something, someone else has it, you become envious. When you want something, you don't get it, you become angry. And when you want something, you get it, you become greedy.
Yeah.
See, ultimately it's selfish desire. So basically Krishna is telling here, when we give full freedom to our selfish propensities, we glide down the path of demoniac behavior. He who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection, nor happiness, nor the supreme destination. According to the pramana of the Shastras, one should decide what is karya and what is akarya. What should be done, what should not be done. Doesn't matter where you are born, how you are born. If you follow the Shastric injunctions, you can attain liberation. Every human being has 4 flaws, as explained: Brahma, Pramada, Vipralipsa, Karanapata. So human beings, because they have these defects, they can't come up with flawless knowledge.
There is always a bias.
Scriptures, that is why, are flawless. If you simply follow the scriptures, it doesn't matter where you are born, how you are born, you will get elevated. Eventually from demoniac to divine.
That makes sense, actually. Pranam Prabhuji. So last time we were halfway through 16 and we were discussing about the various demonic characteristics, and we went through a string of them, and we touched upon why charity is also included, and we discussed why charity given with the wrong intention doesn't really make sense. So over to you for completing that aspect of it.
In text number 17, Krishna kind of continues on the same thing. Self-complacent and always impudent, deluded by wealth and false prestige, they sometimes proudly perform sacrifices in name only. In name only, without following any rules or regulations. Bewildered by false egos, strength, pride, lust and anger, the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies and in the bodies of others, and blaspheme against the real religion. So in this way, Krishna is explaining all these characteristics here. Then he says, those who are envious and mischievous, for the lowest among men, are perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into the various demonic species of life. Attaining repeated birth among the species of demonic life, O son of Kunti, such persons can never approach me. Gradually, they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. And then he says, in the next verse, he's going to explain what begins, like, if we want to safeguard against these negative natures, these tamasic natures, what we need to do. Trividham narakasyedam dvaram nashanam atmanah kama krodastata lobastasma etatrem tajet. There are 3 gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. Essentially, when human beings individually and collectively,
so we're talking of lust,
greed,
and anger.
They're all
Dvesh is not related to this. We saw Dvesh as one of the tamasic, very significant tamasic ones, really.
Yes. So they're all connected, they're all interconnected. So when
one leads to the other in any case.
Really. Yes, they lead to When you have lust, when you covet something and you don't get it, someone else has it, you are envious of that person.
Yeah.
You're connected. So when you don't have something, someone else has it, you become envious. When you want something, you don't get it, you become angry. And when you want something, you get it, you become
You want
greedy.
more.
You become greedy.
Greedy. Yeah.
See, ultimately it's kama,
Yeah.
desire, selfish desire. So basically Krishna is telling here, when we give full freedom to our selfish propensities, we glide down the path of demoniac behavior. So we have to safeguard ourselves. And then something very important here. Then Krishna says, the man who has escaped these 3 gates of hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self-realization and thus gradually attains the supreme destination. And then he says something very interesting. He says, Yashastra vidhim utsrajya vartate kamakarata na sasiddhim apnoti na sukham na paramgati. He who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. Tasma shastram pramanam te karya kara vyavastito jnatu shastra vidhan uktam karma kartum viharasi. One should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. Very interesting here. Tasmat is the last verse of the chapter. Therefore, tasmat shastram pramanam te karya kara vyavastito. According to the pramana of the shastras, one should decide what is karya and what is akarya. What should be done, what should not be done. Jnatva shastra vidhanuktam karma karti. After having explained what are divine, what is divinity, what is demoniac behavior, Krishna concludes by saying that therefore we should go by the shastric injunctions. It's very, very important and very significant. Shastras have the secret formula. If you follow the shastras, as I said in the previous session, we might be born with divine qualities, we might be born with demonic qualities. See, especially in today's day and age, most people will be a mixture of both of them.
Correct.
Divine qualities and demoniac qualities.
Yeah, it could be various combinations of the 3 in any case.
Right. See, it's explained that in Satya Yuga, the Daityas, the Devas and the Daityas, they used to be situated in different planetary systems. But then, if you come to Trita Yuga, Lord Ramchandra, separate continent, Ravana was situated.
Yeah, correct.
Divine and demonic.
Yeah.
Then in Dwapara Yuga, Kauravas and Pandavas, same family.
Yeah, same family.
In Kali Yuga, within the same heart. Within everybody's heart, there is Ram also, Ravan also,
Yeah.
Pandava also, Kauravas also. Divinity and demoniac behavior is found in the hearts of every living entity, actually, in the modern day world. So the point here is this final verse here. Tasma shastram pramanam te. Doesn't matter where you are born, how you are born. If you follow the shastric injunctions, you can attain liberation.
So let's pause.
Ah.
Shastric injunctions requires me to read the Shastras. Pause. What I'm trying to address really is when you go through, those verse number 16, 17, he's very clearly defined what is divine nature and what is demonic nature. These two he's defined. And they intuitively, logically appeal also. Ki bhai, हाँ, ये करेगा तो this is not good, ये करेगा तो this is good. Then is it very important to follow the Shastras?
Yeah,
Why?
very nice.
But then I need to understand the Shastras. Then I need to I cannot be divine or demonic without understanding the Shastras then.
See, as you rightly pointed out, you understand this is right, this is wrong.
It's pretty logical.
Pretty logical.
Yes.
But just knowing something is not sufficient. A lot of people who behave in a demoniac way know it is wrong.
Correct.
But helplessly they're pulled in that direction, because to overcome those qualities is not easy. So coming to the platform of divinity means what? At one level, we are using our free will to make the right choices. That is definitely there. But to even purify the heart so that that propensity to act in a negative way vanishes in due course of time. So this is the whole point here. Somebody might be born with the predominance of a nature of being divine. They're naturally divine. Certain children are there.
Yeah.
They're like saints. They're born saints.
Yeah.
But some others might be there who might be having, to whom these things come very naturally. Demonic propensity comes naturally. In other words, certain people are born more with tamogun.
Yeah.
Certain people are born more with
Satagun.
sattvagun. Correct. But the power of the Shastras, now when I say Shastras, it's very important here. When I say Shastras, in this particular context, Shastric injunctions means what? If you remember the beginning of the chapter, it listed divine qualities as per Varna and Ashram.
Correct. Yes.
So, Shastric injunction in this particular context means Dharma Shastras, which guide the behavior of the different Varnas and Ashramas of society.
But that's interesting now. So you're saying what is divine in one Varna may not necessarily, as per Shastra, be divine in another Varna. That's the reason why a Varna differential will happen.
Yes. See, I'll give an example here. Let me give the example of an ashram here.
Yeah.
Sannyasi. According to the Shastras, a sannyasi, if a sannyasi says that I have sex only once in a year, that's not allowed. Because sannyasi is supposed to strictly abstain from sex life.
Correct.
But if a grahastha says I am having sex once in a year, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Such a grahastha is a saint.
Yeah.
So, as per Varnashrama, the Dharma Shastras are accordingly divided here.
Yeah. So the divine characteristics are not unilateral ones. They are in the context of the ashram and the Varna.
See what the Shastras...
That's what the Shastra is saying.
See, Shastras, they're tailor-made here. If you give a blanket rule for everybody, that won't serve the purpose.
That makes sense.
Correct. So, now, certain characteristics which was listed for a Brahmana.
Yeah.
Correct.
Fearlessness.
Satyam.
Yeah.
May not be so much doable for a Vaishya.
Correct. Because trade requires him.
Trade requires some amount of speaking of lies there. So, see, wherever you are, the Shastra, the whole purpose of the Shastras is to lift you from there, uplift you from there.
Up the ladder.
Up the ladder. So, that is where it's tailor-made. So, people who are purer are given injunctions to make you more pure. People who aren't so pure are given injunctions to rise above that level.
Yeah.
So, that is why it's tailor-made. So, there are Dharma Shastras whose injunctions are to be followed by each Varna and each Ashrama.
Correct.
And when they follow these Dharma Shastras of each, see, every Varna and Ashrama, certain Varnas, certain Ashramas purely deal with Sattva Guna. But there are certain Varnas, certain Ashramas which deal with Rajoguna and Tamoguna also. Grahastha Ashram deals with Rajas and Tamas also.
Correct.
Similarly, in the Varnas, Vaishyas and Shudras have to deal with Rajas and Tamas. Even Kshatriyas have to deal with Rajas. So, the Shastric injunctions are made in such a way that doesn't matter where you are situated, your Sattva Guna is gradually increased.
Correct. So, that's why the Shastra comes in play.
That's why the Shastra comes in play.
So, it is not a unilateral, ye characteristic is good, full stop.
No, full stop.
Yeah.
It's...
Makes sense.
There are shades of grey.
Yeah.
So, that also answers your other question, which you said that if you simply know, isn't that sufficient?
Yeah.
No, because it's not so black and white there.
Yeah.
See, certain characteristics could be quite demoniac. But nonetheless, as per your status, depending upon which varna and ashrama you're situated in, it's part of that varna and ashrama.
Yeah.
That demoniac principle, for example. But then, if you follow the injunctions which is recommended for you, slowly through following it, you rise up the ladder and eventually you come to Sattva. See, this is the...
That makes sense, actually.
This is the royal plan here. See, this is the grand plan here. So, Shastras are called Apaurusheya, that is why. They are beyond human defects. They're called Apaurusheya. They're coming from a higher source. They're directly coming from the breathing of Lord Vishnu. So, they are what you call it, flawless. So, every human being has 4 flaws, it is explained. Brahma, Pramada, Vipralipsa, Karnapata. We have imperfect senses. Because we have imperfect senses, we make mistakes. And even though we make mistakes, we often want to hide the mistake. And we have got a cheating propensity. And because we have got imperfect senses, we have got a tendency to become illusioned. We make mistakes, we get illusioned also. Mistake is a mistake. Illusion means what? You consider one thing to be something else.
Correct. You believe it is something else.
Something else. So, human beings, any mortal being of this world is subjugated to these 4 defects. And with these...
And which is the 4th one?
Cheating propensity.
Cheating.
Even though you are illusioned, even though you have a tendency to make mistakes, you want to hide it.
Correct. You want to hide it.
That is a cheating propensity. So, human beings, because they have these defects, they can't come up with flawless knowledge.
There is always a bias.
So, scriptures, that is why, are flawless. And if you follow the scriptures, if you simply follow the scriptures, it doesn't matter where you are born, how you are born, you will get elevated. Eventually from demoniac to divine.
That makes sense.
See, I'll give an example here. With our own imperfect senses, it's very difficult to come to the right conclusions. The Vedas, they say that the bone of an animal is a contaminated thing. And also the stool of an animal is a contaminated thing. So the Shastras recommend that if you happen to touch the bone of an animal or a stool of an animal, you should take a bath.
I see.
But then the very same Shastras, they explain that cow dung is so pure that it is used to purify a place. It has got antiseptic properties. It looks contradictory. But then, now even modern research says that cow dung indeed had antiseptic properties. So, Vedas are perfect. And if we see, one of the things that was explained in the earlier verses also about demonic nature is they don't know what is to be done, what is not to be done. Because there is no guiding principle in your life.
Yeah, mentioned.
So when there is no guiding principle in your life, there is every chance that you'll go down the wrong path.
Correct. There's no umpire.
Yes. See, one interesting thing I want to point out here, that see, in the modern day world, well-meaning people, they're turning vegan. Veganism means what? Veganism is not, you're not just vegetarian, but you also refrain from milk, etc., which are also considered to be animal products. And oftentimes veganism makes a lot of sense. Why? Because especially the modern dairy industry, there's a lot of violence involved there. I don't know whether they're aware of it or not. So generally the cows who are getting milked, they're eventually sent to a slaughterhouse.
Oh, I see.
Once they stop giving milk, they're sent to a slaughterhouse. So they are used like machine to produce some milk, and once they stop giving the product, they're sent to a slaughterhouse. So it's a very violent industry. And many a times the calf, which is supposed to get nourished from the milk of the cow, is immediately killed after birth.
Oh.
I have seen videos actually. Dairy farm.
Why would that be?
because they are a liability.
I see.
Cows are a liability. Once they're born, the cow starts producing milk, but the calf is a liability. The calf is immediately killed, slaughtered. A lot of cruelty is there in the dairy industry. So from that perspective, veganism makes sense. But as per the scriptures, cow's milk especially is perfect for a human being. But then, if you don't follow the scriptures, if you don't trust the scriptures, people wonder, oh, it's cruelty against the calf.
Yeah.
Because the milk is supposed for the calf. But the Shastras, they are the via medium through which human beings can understand what is the plan of God for us. God has planned in things in such a way that the cow's milk especially is meant for human consumption. See, I'll tell you how. Now, in Vrindavan, close to Vrindavan is Barsana. So in Barsana, there is a place called Dohani Kund.
Mm-hmm.
Dohani Kund is the place where cows used to be milked. And the word Dohani.
That means milking, actually.
Milking.
Yeah.
Dohani. See, the cow has 4 udders. And Dohani means you remove milk only from 2 and leave the other 2 for the consumption of the calf.
I see.
So, according to the Vedic system, the half the milk is taken for human consumption, half is given for the calf. Actually, half of it is actually meant for human consumption. See, if you consider mammals, generally, for every offspring, there are 2 nipples in the mother. If you calculate it for, dogs, for example, how many nipples does the dog have? How many offsprings are born of it? The calculation is generally for every offspring there are 2 nipples. But when it comes to a cow, for a calf, there are 4. Actually, only 2 are meant for it by God's arrangement, which is transmitted through the Shastra. 2 are meant for human consumption. Now, if the calf somehow manages to drink all the milk, you know what happened? We had cow in our home when I was small. When the calf drinks all the milk,
it'll die of indigestion.
Yeah, it definitely falls sick, and then he has got worms in its stomach because it is having indigestion, because it has consumed more than it is supposed to consume.
Yeah.
See, this world is Prakriti. It's a nature. It's a
nature's law.
Nature, and it's a machine manufactured by the Purusha, the Supreme Lord. And you take a machine, how modern people are approaching the machine of Prakriti is, you're trying to figure out on your own how it functions or what is right and what is wrong. Whimsically, you're trying to figure out this is right, that is right. You might be well intending. You might be having the best of intentions. But still, you are every chance of you going the wrong way because human intelligence is insufficient to figure out how exactly Prakriti functions. How Prakriti functions, God has given the manual, the scriptures.
That's the scriptures.
The Shastras. See, somebody might ask, okay, in India, you got all the scriptures. What if you're born somewhere else? Regardless of where people are born, there is some injunction of the scriptures that is available. Christianity, they got some scriptures. And Islam, they got some scriptures. Ultimately, it's all coming from the same source, who is God. Every bona fide religion has the same source, who is God. If everybody follows whatever scriptures they have access to, that will also solve the problem. I don't know whether we discussed this previously. The basic foundational principle of all the scriptures is the same. I think I had spoken about
we've discussed that actually.
The perennial philosophy and things like that. A lot of, the basic principles, there is a supreme authority about all of us that, this life is not the all in all and this world is not the all in all. These common concepts in all the major religions of the world. And all the major religions of the world help you elevate your consciousness only if you follow the rules and regulations. So, basic principle is the more society turns away from God and turns away from the word of God, which is scripture, what happens is, even though you might be well-meaning, still there is every chance of turning towards demonic
works.
way of life. There is every chance of doing
Yeah.
that. See, something very interesting which I was thinking about. The Japanese, if you see their culture, it's pretty divine. In the sense that they're quite sattvic people, in the sense that they're disciplined and they're also helping. And then so many things are there. But somewhere down the line, if you dig into Japanese history,
But that seems to have happened after World War II.
even during World War II, I'm speaking about World War II only now. Prior to World War II, rather than following the word of God, they started following the word of a king. See the extremities to which Japanese were going to safeguard the king. See, basically the word of God was replaced by some other word of the mortal. And if you see some of the activities of the Japanese soldiers during the course of World War II, the kind of atrocities that they committed on the Chinese, hardcore Kamsik. Correct. How is it that people who have got such a divine upbringing can stoop down to such demonic nature? Because they're not being guided by the scriptures. If there is absence of the guidance of the scriptures, a person might be having good qualities, born with good qualities, and might be having quite sattvic upbringing also, but every chance of slipping
despite the nurturing, it can slip. Really.
Can slip. While on the other hand, a person might be born demoniac, and a person might be brought up in an ambience which is more or less tamasic. But still, if the person somehow makes sure that he or she follows the Shastric injunctions, when I say Shastric injunctions, the word of God, regardless of where that person is situated currently, in due course of time, that fellow will develop divine qualities. That is assured. So this chapter is extremely eye-opener. It's an eye-opener that ultimately it's, see, a lot of verses if you see in this particular chapter, Krishna actually explains how when you have a worldview devoid of God, how your consciousness starts slipping.
Yeah.
If you reread those verses, he's systematically explaining it.
Yeah.
Step by step. So this is a very logical chapter actually. You'll have to read it to connect the dots.
Yeah, there's one other interesting feature which I keep finding, and maybe this is the right time to ask. So if you see again somewhere in this chapter, I'm just trying to see where it is, either verse 16 or 17. Again, amongst the demonic characteristic, the word wealth comes in. Is there a high propensity of wealth being associated with the demonic rather than divine? Or there is no relationship? Really?
See, wealth inherently wealth is neutral. But wealth has the power to corrupt you. See, there is a very beautiful episode in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto. Narad Muni is passing through a particular place in the heavenly planets, and there is the Ganga actually flows in the heavenly planets also as per the scriptures. It's called Mandakini Ganga. So there are two sons of Kuvera, Manigriva and Nalakuvara. And because they're sons of Kuvera, they got a lot of wealth. So what they're doing is they're bathing without any clothes with a lot of heavenly damsels in the Mandakini Ganga. So they are having their own pastimes there. So when Narad Muni passes through that area, all the ladies, they immediately see, oh, a saint is coming. So we shouldn't be in this kind of a cloth in front of a saint. So immediately they get out of the water, put on their clothes. But these two people, without any clothes on their bodies, they continue. And their mentality was, why this fellow has to come through this place? Couldn't he find some other way to walk? So when Narada Muni sees them, he doesn't become angry. He becomes compassionate on them. He understands that the consciousness is extremely tamasic right now. And then in verse after verse after verse, it's a string of verses, Narada Muni is contemplating the ill effects of wealth. See, wealth is the biggest intoxicant. Because wealth can buy you everything. Wealth can buy you power. Wealth can buy you beauty. Wealth can do anything. And so a person gets a sense that I am supreme, I am God. And that arrogance is the beginning of that person's downfall. That is the beginning of tamoguna. Wealth gives rise to false pride, arrogance, and a person becomes more susceptible to
Demonic
other tamasic qualities, tamasic characteristics. So that is why traditionally, if you see traditional wealthy families, they always balance that wealth with high amount of spiritual culture. So when there is high amount of spiritual culture, then what happens is your sanity is maintained and that wealth also is sustainable. See, sattva guna is required for maintenance. Rajoguna, creation. Tamoguna, destruction. So Vishnu is in charge of sattva guna, maintenance. Brahmaji is in charge of Rajoguna, creation. And Lord Shiva is in charge of Tamoguna, destruction. Wealth inherently is in Rajogun. If that Rajogun is not balanced with Sattvagun, which generally comes through spiritual culture, spiritual traditions, through spirituality, it is very difficult to maintain that wealth. If there is, in the absence of Sattva-guna, you will be overcome by Tamo-guna and that wealth will be destroyed. So we see in the modern day world, people create wealth, the wealth gets destroyed also. The wealth doesn't stay beyond one generation. Because there is Sattva-guna is lacking. When there is Sattva-guna, which comes through spirituality, wealth stays beyond one generation to successive generation also. So that is why, another way of seeing it is, Lakshmi, wealth, is a consort of Narayan. Lakshmi on her own, she is Chanchala. She doesn't stay at one place. But she stays at a place where Narayan is worshipped. So if Narayan worship is going on, Lakshmi stays. Otherwise, she keeps shifting from this place to another place to another place to another place. So this is a thing, That is why if you see, traditionally in India, wealth used to stay with certain families. But that trend is disappearing today. Why? Because people don't understand this science, that Rajoguna, if not it is balanced with Sattva-guna, Tamo-guna will overcome it and that will lead to destruction of that wealth. In one generation, wealth is created also, in the same generation it is destroyed also. So wealth inherently is not bad, but it has to be coupled with spiritual practices. That's very important. We'll end here then?
Yes.
We have completed this chapter.
This chapter is over. Thank you.
Demonic individuals are self-complacent, impudent, and deluded by wealth and false prestige. They sometimes proudly perform sacrifices in name only, without following any rules or regulations. They are bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, making them envious of the Supreme and causing them to blaspheme against the real religion. Such people can never approach the Supreme. We learn about the three gates leading to hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane person should abandon these because they lead to the soul's degradation. And the three are interconnected. When one covets something and does not get it, or if someone else has it, one becomes envious. When one wants something and does not get it, one becomes angry. When one wants something and gets it, one wants more, thus becoming greedy. Shastric injunctions are essential because just knowing what is right and wrong is insufficient. People who behave demoniacally often know it is wrong but are helplessly pulled in that direction because overcoming those qualities is difficult. To reach the platform of divinity requires using free will to make right choices and purifying the heart so the propensity for negative actions vanishes. Shastric injunctions refer to the Dharma Shastras, which guide the behavior of the different varnas, of the social orders, and ashrams, or stages of life. The Dharma Shastras are tailor-made to uplift individuals from their current position, with injunctions designed to increase one's sattva gun or mode of goodness, regardless of one's current situation. Shastras are considered flawless knowledge or apurusha, as they come from a higher source, directly from the breathing of Lord Vishnu. Human beings have four inherent flaws: imperfect senses, making mistakes, a cheating propensity, and a tendency to become illusioned. Because of these flaws, humans cannot generate flawless knowledge. And finally, wealth in itself is neutral but possesses the power to corrupt. Wealth is the biggest intoxicant because it can buy power, beauty, and anything else, leading a person to feel supreme or like God. This arrogance is the start of the person's downfall and the beginning of tamas. Lakshmi is naturally restless and does not stay in one place, but she remains where Narayan is worshipped. Therefore, wealth must be coupled with spiritual practices.